part of our job as dads is to just equip our sons to be able to say, you're going to face some things that feel absolutely insurmountable. What are you going to do in the face of those things? We can't prepare them for every single challenge, but what we do want to prepare them for is to be the kind of man that has that settled confidence where he believes of himself that he can face those challenges.
Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast. Men's Alliance is a growing movement of tribes across the nation that meet weekly for rugged outdoor workouts and a real-world devotion around a fire. If you want to be a part of what we're doing, join us at men'salliancetribe.com, where you can find a tribe near you or come to one of our Start the Fire weekends. So check us out at men'salliancetribe.com. Now stay tuned for this great podcast. Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast. I'm Dave Mills Goose, and with me today, I've got an awesome guest, Don Ross. Don, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Goose. I'm doing really well. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, man. We're going to have a conversation today that I don't think we've really done much of a podcast on, and that's rites of passage.
Yeah.
And how to properly bring boys into manhood.
Yeah.
And mark that event in their life. So, Mark, Don, talking about Mark, tell us a little bit about what you do and your ministry, your organization, and what you provide for this unique moment in a young man's life.
Yeah. Yeah, so I lead an organization called Manhood Tribes, which is really all about creating, we say it's about creating groups of extraordinary men who follow Jesus at every stage of life. So we are really trying to find ways to help guys build community with other men around different kind of important stages and seasons of what goes on in a man's life. And the first of those really is kind of that transition from boyhood to manhood. So I've built a rite of passage program called First Tribe that is really for a group of dads with middle school sons who are trying to usher their sons into young manhood. And so we kind of lay out all the steps for you and help you figure out all the things that you need to do to really kind of walk your boy through that season of life and how to help him advance well into being a young man.
Man, so important. And man, there's so many areas I want to come at this, right? And one, I just got to say, like, we did just totally informally, not like any real program, but I did something like this 2 years ago with a group of dads in Men's Alliance, and we all had 14-year-old boys. There were four of us, and we all had 14-year-old boys who were all turning 15 that year. And we were like, man, we got to do something right. And looking back on it, that was such a cool year. Yeah. And we got together, and I'll talk a little bit about the books we used and stuff, but we did something. That's the point. We did something. We went through some books, reading them together with our teenagers, having meals together, talking about these important topics, and then marking them with some cool events. So
yeah, that's fantastic.
I'll tell you, like, having just gone through something kind of like this, that son is now 16, and man, what a cool thing. I'm so glad that I did that. I wanted to talk just a minute about, like, the history of this stuff.
Yeah.
Rites of passage. It's something that when you start looking into this, you start researching it, you see, like, this stuff's been going on for thousands of years in every part of the world. What's some of the stuff that you've noticed from researching that's being done or has been done throughout the world?
Yeah, so I would say, you're exactly right, especially in this transition from boyhood to manhood, in almost all cultures throughout history, geography, kind of wherever you look. There's been some kind of passage, season, event, you name it, but something that has kind of marked the end of one season for the boy and the beginning of a new season for him as a man. Sometimes those have been more intense than others. I was actually talking to a guy just recently, and we were kind of we both had kind of heard some about the stories of the Maasai tribes in Africa and how, what they required of their young men, was usually they had to go out and kill a lion and bring it back to the village as a way of demonstrating their manhood. That's probably more extreme than what we need here in the West.
Love it.
But it is a great example of just the reality that in any environment, the boy is going to face real challenges as he moves into manhood. And that's really what this rite of passage season is about, is preparing him to kind of have that settled confidence as a man that whatever challenges he's going to face, he knows that he has what it takes to be able to face them. That doesn't mean that he knows everything. It doesn't mean that, he can solve every problem easily by himself. That's not realistic. But it does mean that we as dads are helping him get to the place where he can say, whatever the challenge that comes my way, I know that I have something that I can offer. I can make some effort and some progress here because I am a man and I do have what it takes. And, there's a whole lot of validation that's involved in that. There's a whole lot of encouragement that needs to come from the dad to the son. But yeah, it's been a pretty universal thing, really up until kind of the modern era in the West. And, I think it probably kind of started with the Industrial Revolution as dads were getting out of the family environment more and spending more of their days in a work environment.
Right.
That kind of disconnect really started happening between dads and sons. But, I would say we in the West are the exception to the rule in terms of, how common a rite of passage has really been for boys and men, throughout history.
Yeah, that's right. It was really, you think about the way it used to be in an agrarian culture where boys spent all their day with the dad on the farm or with the animals and the crops, or in whatever trade that the dad had, blacksmith or whatever. And then when the dad starts going off to the factory job and leaving the young boy at home with the mom, I think you're exactly right. That's where this thing started falling apart. So I think what we're talking about here is not like creating something new. This is about going back to what always worked. And you bring up the Maasai. I love that one. Man, how cool is that, right? Slaying a lion. Or I've read that some tribes, they had to go up and slap a lion, just random things. And I think the point is it's got to be difficult. It's got to be a challenge because when the young man does it, afterwards, there's this massive realization of his strength and his power. He's like, I'm capable. I have what it takes to do this thing. I've read, there's like some Native American tribes that would just, you had to spend like a couple days and nights out on your own, isolated.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that's pretty difficult.
I think all of those things are fantastic and impressive. But, I think, like you talked about, that we kind of in the West we're now kind of trying to recover that a little bit. I think some of the things that I see that we're doing well and maybe not so well is that, in all of those kind of like tribal associations, a little bit of what you're talking about there, the event of the rite of passage is really a culmination. It's really the end of a season where there's kind of this like ceremony or event that really kind of marks the end of that season of preparation. Which is really good, but it's just a reminder that no boy is prepared to go spend 2 or 3, days out in the wilderness by himself. Like that's not something that you just, you don't throw a boy into that deep end without a lot of preparation leading up to that place.
That's right. They didn't go 0 to 60. This was something they had been working on for years building up to.
Yeah. And I would say that's the thing that I see happening in the West that maybe concerns me a little bit when it comes to rite of passages is that I see a lot of organizations, churches even trying to recover this idea of a rite of passage, which I think is fantastic. And to do something is certainly better than to do nothing.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of just kind of what I would call ceremonial events where the rite of passage is kind of like a night or maybe even just a weekend. And you go do some cool, really cool things with your dad, or maybe, your dad and some older men and some of your peers. And, people say some encouraging things. You might do some, some fun kind of manly stuff. And at the end of the event, the older men kind of like, W with a sword, and turn you into a man. Which is, none of that's bad. Like I'm for all of those things.
Right. Yeah. It's better than nothing.
Yeah. In and of itself, just that one kind of ceremonial event is really not going to be enough to get the boy to that place where he genuinely believes that he is a man and that he has what it takes to face the rest of his life. That does take a season of challenge and preparation and cultivation. And so that's what I've tried to do with First Tribe is we do it over the course of 9 months, and you do like a once a month gathering with all the dads and sons together. And then in between those gatherings, you, dad, and your son have some things to do, just the two of you together. And it does kind of culminate in a big ceremony type thing at the end. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into preparing for that and having the boy be ready for that. So that when you are speaking that into him of like, hey, we see you as a man, we're calling you up into our community of manhood, he has reason to believe that. You know, he has reason to understand, yeah, I do belong with them. I belong in the world of men, and here's how I've demonstrated that and proved that and earned that place. So it takes more than just an event.
Oh man, I 100% agree with you. I think a lot of, this is like short circuiting the process.
Yeah.
This is like, let's skip to the end and just give our young teenage boys a ceremony that makes them feel that way. But as you were saying that, I was just thinking, that would be like at the end of pilot training or nav training, you just hand a guy a set of wings. Well, if you just have the ceremony where you're given the wings and you're told you're a pilot now, man, you're gonna go home and you're gonna like set it on your dresser and you're gonna be like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really feel like it. I don't really think I am.
And you're not gonna be very effective when you actually get in the cockpit.
Like, if you get in the cockpit, you're gonna realize that you're not.
Yeah.
And so we got to do the same thing with our boys. It's the year-long process of studying and flying every week.
Yeah.
That builds that confidence slowly, and then the ceremony is the culmination. It's like you're done. You've done everything there is to do. Go forth, man. Go out there and conquer. So I think that's a great point. We can't just throw the ceremony at our boys, because man, they're gonna see through that. They're like, it's this big hoopla. I'm no different than I was yesterday. So I love hearing that yours is a 9-month process. I think that sounds really good. Tell us a little bit about what goes on during those 9 months. What's the process look like?
Yeah. So I kind of built this around what I would say are the 3 things that your son needs to advance into manhood. Okay, so I think this is really kind of a 3-part process. The first one is that he needs a clear vision of what it means to be a man. So, I don't think it's hard work to communicate to guys today that we are upside down in our culture when it comes to understanding gender. It is as confusing as it ever has been, to try to figure out what gender is all about. And, especially as it relates to manhood, to masculinity, what does it mean to be a man? And so as dads, I think that we've got to really take some responsibility on there to say, if I want my son to have a clear picture of what it means to be a man, I'm going to have to give that to him. If he just goes and looks around at the culture, and asked 10 people, what does it mean to be a man? He's going to get 15 different answers. It is just, it's so discombobulated right now. And for a boy to try to look at the culture and figure out what does it mean to be a man, he's not going to get any kind of clear answer. So we built that around this idea of what I call the 5 marks of manhood. These are the things that I think all men need to possess in terms of what it means to demonstrate being a man. So they're kind of traits. They're not really like virtues or roles. They're just the things that if you look across history and culture, you're going to see these things crop up in all groups and communities of men. So those 5 marks of manhood are strength, courage, skill, honor, and allegiance. Those are the things that I would say, like, again, they're not morally good. They're kind of morally neutral, but they teach you just the picture of, these 5 things together are things that all men need to possess so that they can demonstrate their manhood. And so we do a whole lot to kind of talk about and to challenge ourselves in those areas of manhood. So, giving them that clear picture means that we do a few different things. We do, at every one of our gatherings, we talk about those 5 marks of manhood, and we talk about some of the big questions in life and how they relate to those things. And then in between the gatherings is where we reinforce them a lot. So there's 2 different things that happen in between every gathering that a dad does with his son. One is what we call a manhood challenge. And that's where there's some kind of challenge that's related to the content that we covered in that gathering, but that's also built around one of those 5 marks of manhood. So for example, during one of the challenges where or one of the gatherings where we talk about what it means to be a young man and how as a young man you need to cultivate strength. This is really when your body is becoming, you're kind of moving into having a man's body, and a man's body is built for strength. So we do a manhood challenge, which is just, hey, at this gathering, we're going to do a test. We're going to see how many push-ups you can do in 60 seconds, how many sit-ups you can do in 60 seconds, and we're going to run a mile and just see what your, count is or time is on all of those things. And then over the course of the next month, we just encourage them to continue to work on those things and see how much progress they can make over the course of the month. Right. So the challenge isn't really about like how athletic are you and how well can you do at these things. The challenge is to get the boy to see that with a little bit of intentionality and effort, he actually can grow in that area pretty quickly. It's to help him understand my body really is wired for strength. And if I push it in this way, it will get stronger. It will do better at these things. And that's meant to be the encouragement behind it. So yeah, for each one of those, we do some kind of a manhood challenge. And then we also have a movie night. So we have a movie that we suggest that you watch, dad and son together, that relates to the content that we covered in that gathering. And then to just kind of talk about like, how did you see those marks of manhood show up in the men in the stories? What did you learn about being a man from those particular characters? How did they do it well? How did they not? What did all of that look like? So that's how we try to reinforce kind of the clear vision of manhood. What does it look like? What does it mean to be a man?
Man, so I love that. I love how, right off the bat, I'm looking on your website here, the top of, you've got this star here for the 5 marks of manhood. And the top one is strength. And obviously that, that's a huge part of Men's Alliance. A huge part of what we do is the physical workout, the 30 minutes a week. We got a lot of fathers and sons. We got lots of teenagers. We also have a lot of teenagers without that father figure.
Yeah.
Maybe their dad's absent or, just not available. And they're either dropped off by mom or they're picked up by another guy, or maybe they come with an uncle or something. And, but no matter what, there's this tremendous, kind of like bonding and synergy that happens when we work out together, especially across generations like that. Like, a lot of our weekly tribes, we've got like 13, 16-year-olds, 14, 15, and then there's some guys that are like in their 30s and 40s, and then there's a couple guys that are like 60s and 70s.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's funny because like when you do the run, man, when we like take a lap around the property, dude, the young guys just smoke us.
Yeah.
They just crush us. And we're like, oh, man, we're sucking wind. And they excel. And they love that, right? And they love that they can beat us at that. And I think that's good for them. And then it's good for them to get humbled when we swing the 30-pound sledgehammer, or flip the tire or do something like that.
Yeah, both aspects are good.
Yeah, you really see played out right there in one workout together that nobody gets a chance to get too cocky.
Yeah.
You can't get too cocky if you're the young, fast guy, but you can't get cocky if you're the old, strong guy either. And so you kind of mix the dads and the sons generations in this physical workout. And, man, it's one of those things that in our culture people are just forgetting about. I bet you when you said 1 mile run, I bet a lot of listeners gasped.
Yeah.
Like what? Like literally? Like you're literally running? Is that like a metaphor? Is that an app?
Not a metaphor. Yeah, it's literally getting out and running.
Dude, that's awesome.
It's a good challenge. So
you got strength, skill, allegiance, honor, and courage.
That's right.
And so you've got the strength test, then you said a movie night. What else?
Yeah. So the first thing there is about giving that clear vision of manhood. The second thing is giving them opportunities to practice being a man. And so that's what all those manhood challenges are about. The boy just needs to kind of try on the shoes of being a man and start getting comfortable with it. There's a whole bunch of different challenges that we do there. One of my favorite ones is a courage challenge that we do after a session where we talk about how to love a woman. What does it really look like as a man to love a woman well?
Oh man, that's a needed topic.
It's definitely a needed topic, and especially around this age, where they're like just kind of coming into the world of girls and trying to figure all that out.
By the way, hold on. What is the age that you recommend?
Yeah.
Or
So
do you have an age you recommend?
yeah, we usually say that this works best around 11 to 15, so kind of in that like middle
Okay.
school age range. Before that, they're probably a little too young for some of the content to really make sense and stick. It just won't be relevant to their world yet. And older than that, they've probably moved into the kind of too cool phase a little bit, where they're just doing stuff with a group of their dad's friends. It's maybe not the thing that is going to attract them the most. But that's not to say that there can't be exceptions to that. So it's about investing in your son, and so at any age that can be appropriate. But 11 to 15 is where I think
Okay.
it works best.
Okay.
So when we're doing the session on, how to love a woman, we give them a challenge where they have to initiate a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation with a girl. And
Nice. I like it.
when we tell them that challenge, I mean, the moans and groans just start coming out. It is hilarious to just watch their reaction, because everything in their world nowadays is digital.
Yeah.
So all communication happens
they just
over
want
text.
to text.
Yeah, they just so they've got no real communication skills when it comes to that, especially talking to the opposite sex. And so that's where we just say, hey, it doesn't have to be a romantic thing. This is not about trying to get a girlfriend. This is just about learning to talk to girls. Because
That's right.
if you're going to be an effective husband, coworker, anything down the road, you've got to learn how to be able to have some communication skills, and that men and women don't always talk the same. And so you've got to learn how to be able to talk to her about things that you're interested in, about things that she's interested in. And so, yeah, watching them even try to
Might
come
need
up
to
with
learn how to listen.
who's a girl that I could even talk to? Like some of them aren't even at that place yet. So, that's a really fun challenge, but it's a great way of just kind of demonstrating courage. For most of them, there's a lot of fear there. Just kind of anxiety over can I even do
Oh
this?
man,
I bet
I bet they're asking if they can just kill a lion instead, right?
Oh yeah, this last one that I did, one of the guys even said, "Can I just run a mile again?"
Dude, I'll take physical courage. Just get that's all they're thinking of. You talk to a 14-year-old guy about courage, man, he's thinking about slaying dragons, climbing mountains, and you're like, I should go start up a conversation with that girl right there.
Yep. So
That's
so
cool.
we go through all of those. There's challenges built into into each gathering. So the third thing that I really kind of talk about is the what your son how to help your son become a man, is really just the whole rite of passage idea. He needs a dedicated season to advance from boyhood to manhood. So how we approach that just overall with our rite of passage is we try to answer some really big questions about life and about what it means to be a man. So we come at it saying there's 4 big questions that we want to try to answer for you. And those questions are, who am I? So learning about identity. Who is God? Recognizing that, this is his world, we're just living in it. And so we need to learn to orient ourselves around him. What am I meant for? So kind of understanding, just getting to the heart of purpose. Why am I here? What is life about as a man? And then lastly, do I have what it takes? Do I have the ability to actually show up and contribute for these things that I am meant to be doing? So each gathering is kind of built around an answer to one of those questions. So like, for example, what I talked about in the conversation about women, that's in the question about what am I meant for? And so one of the answers to that is to love a woman. And so we build the conversation around that. We have some teaching content that we kind of go through for that. We watch like a short movie clip or something that's kind of related to it. And then there's some questions for discussion. And so the dads are, for the most part, the dads are asking the sons questions. But there's a little bit of back and forth there. There's some questions for the dads as well, just to help give some insight and wisdom from the dads that the sons can hear. And honestly, I think this is one of the best parts of how we do the rite of passage the way that we do it is, there's 2 things involved there. One, the son gets to do it around his peers. So it's not just him and his dad, but he's doing it along with other boys who are in his age and stage of life. So it helps to kind of lower his guard a little bit so that every conversation doesn't feel like, an awkward dad lecture. It can start to feel like it's just him and his buddies talking about things that are
that's
relevant
so
to
important.
them. But he also then gets exposed to other grown men. For a lot of boys, this might be the first time that they're having real conversations and hearing real things from other grown men besides their dad, hearing what it is like to be a man and having other guys talk about how they have encountered those things in their world, in their life. And that is super good because it allows then towards the end, when we get to that ceremony phase, for the boy to be able to receive from this group of men some real words of affirmation, and in a way that those things actually land. They actually stick, because these older men have been around the boy long enough to see him, to see what good is coming out of him, and how to be able to affirm that and kind of launch him into manhood. So that group kind of tribe mentality of doing it together, I think, is one of the most helpful things that we do for this rite of passage.
Man, that's so good. So I'm sure you have heard of the older book, Raising a Modern Day Knight.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I feel like this one, at least in my life and my generation and exposure, I thought that this one kind of like blazed that trail. I think it came out in like the mid 90s.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like nowhere near thinking about having kids in the 90s. And but I was an uncle. I have older sisters that were having kids, and so that's where I first heard about this whole concept of a ceremony and a rite of passage, because it wasn't done for me. It wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
And so I read that book. I saw my brother-in-laws actually do their version of that book, Raising a Modern Day Knight, for their boys, my nephews, who I always looked at them as like exemplary. I was like, if I have boys one day, I want them to be like that, and here's what these dads are doing. And so I remember reading that book, Raising a Modern Day Knight, as soon as my oldest son was born. And so I had seen it modeled with my nephews, and I was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this when my son is older. And, I think for guys listening to this, we talk about what age, and Don was saying like 11 to 15. And so I think that's really important, is to leave it at an age range, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, like you think about rites of passage ceremony, think about boyhood to manhood. Probably the biggest one that comes to my mind is the Jewish bar mitzvah.
Uh-huh.
And they're just like, boom, 13 on your
Right.
birthday, right? And at 13, I think. And so we did that for my oldest son. We did his ceremony. And I did a year of work up to that point, going through that book with him and all that stuff that I know so many guys our age have gone through. And then we did that ceremony. So it was on his 13th birthday.
Uh-huh.
But then my next son, when he came along, and we're going through this as he's getting older, he's 4 years younger than his older brother, and I was like, this just doesn't feel right. Like, he's too young. But I felt like my hands were tied. I was like, oh man, it's got to be at 13. And I just, I was like, no, we're not doing it at 13.
Yeah.
So your older brother was at 13, and for my younger son, we did his at 15. And for him, that was the perfect age. And for Luke, it was, for Luke, it was 13. For Braden, it was 15. So I think a big piece of this is, as dads, you got to be able to adjust and call an audible as needed to make it fit right for your son. And so, a lot of guys, they get way too wrapped up in, doing it like perfectly by the book too. And I think we got to be able to adjust it. So
yeah, I agree. I think there's, I think you got to know your son, and just kind of evaluate, like, is he at the place where he's ready for this? Will this stick with him if we go after this now? And, that's a thing that only you as a parent are really going to be able to know. But, I think too, the advantage of doing it as a group is that if you can get a group of boys who are kind of, around the same age, and and it's hitting them right, I think he's going to experience the pull of that because his peers are doing it. That, it's going to help move him in that direction. Even if, as a dad, you're looking at him and going, I don't know if he's quite ready for that. Like, the fact that his peers are ready for it may actually be the catalyst to help him get ready, to actually kind of push him that direction.
Completely agree. With my older son, it was just me and him, and we would go out for breakfast and we would talk through chapters in that book. Yeah. And then with my younger son, it was the group of all the dads with all of their 14-year-olds. So yeah, I did one in alone. I did one with the group, and you're absolutely right. The group is better. Plus, when my younger son was going through his passage, I was well into Men's Alliance at that time, so I was in much more of a tribe. We were surrounded by strong Christian men who I wanted to be a part of my son's life. And I think that was very different. I was different. I was in a different place. I was a different guy. So I think for dads, it's like, if you've got really young sons and you're still years away from this this event, the best thing you can do now is start getting yourself into that place that you want to be. Start building your tribe, getting yourself to the place where, man, when he's 13 or 14 or whatever, and you're ready to start these conversations with him, you want to already be there, right?
Yeah.
So you can't lead your son to a place where you've never been. So
that's right.
If you got to surround yourself with a tribe, you got to get yourself strong. You got to get yourself honorable and the courage and all these marks of manhood that we're discussing. So I think there's work to be done. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, my boys are 3 and 4 or whatever, it's like, good. You've got time to get yourself ready for this, because it's gonna come fast. And I would also just throw out err. If you're gonna err on their age and when to do this, err it younger.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
Yeah,
okay.
I would agree too. I think the closer that they get to the upper part of that age range, the more that they're starting to pull away from family. And so you really kind of want to, there is a sweet spot in there, I think, for each boy, and like you're saying, it's not always at the same age, but there's a sweet spot where they are beginning to move into and have some interest in the world of men, but they're not quite moving away from family yet. And as he gets towards that 15, 16 age range, the thought of doing something with his dad, it's kind of the last thing he's interested in.
Yeah. It's like having the talk. Yeah. It's like having the sex talk with your son when he's 17. It's like, dude, you missed that one. Yeah. Right.
Kind of missed the window there. Yeah.
The sweet spot's probably 13 to 15, in my opinion. I would say 13 to 15 is right where you want to be, but it'd be better to do it at 12 than at 17, right? Yeah. If you're going to err, start early. You can never start. At least you can start having these conversations, right? Before you like officially, formally begin. Yeah. Man, just be talking to them about what it means to have honor, what it means to be strong and have courage.
I was actually going to say, as you're talking about dads with sons who are younger than this, like there's never too early a time to kind of start into that road of, giving them a clear vision of what it means to be a man, talking about the marks of manhood. My sons and I actually, we do a podcast together called Manly Tales, where it's like a storytelling podcast where we have a guy who narrates a story for us that's about, some kind of man from history or legend or myth or whatever, just, kind of cool manly figure. And so we listen to the story, and then after the story's done, we just kind of talk about, like, what did we hear in that story about what it means to be a man? Let's talk about the 5 marks of manhood. What did we see? How did he do those things well? So we do that as a podcast. I mean, it's been, from a dad standpoint, it's been great for me in terms of quality time with my sons. But we do it as a way to just kind of help dads be able to have some of those kinds of conversations with your son. So, we talk about what did we learn from the story, and then we try to leave you with a question that you can talk to your son about and that he can talk to you about. And it's super easy. I think a lot of guys are just intimidated around this conversation because they don't know what to say. They don't know how to jump into it. And so we try to just take the pressure off of it. Like, talk about the stories and the characters that you love, and what does that teach you about being a man? Especially when your boys are young, like, it's not hard to find stories of cool men that they're interested in, superheroes and athletes and, whatever. That's a really easy inroad to being able to have those discussions with your younger kids.
Absolutely. And what I've always done, just kind of informally throughout the years, is, man, when I'm watching a movie with my sons or daughters, I pause it a lot. They're probably annoyed at this, right? I'll pause it and be like, "Come on, what should that character have just done?"
Yeah.
What do you think he should have done? Or what would you have done? Or what did he just do really well right there? Did you catch why he just did that? Or
Yeah.
what and I think there's little lessons like that where you just weave them in, and, you don't want to like stop the movie for an hour and give them a lecture, but, I think we can weave in a lot of important life lessons on what it means to be a man just in the day-to-day moments of our life. And when we're watching a show or a movie together, you're the dad. Take control, literally in this case with a control, and pause things and talk about it and look for ways to weave these, 5 marks of manhood into your day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's take a quick break. We're having an amazing conversation and time's flying by, but need to get in a word from a sponsor. And then we're going to be back with more of Don Ross and hear about this first tribe for boyhood to manhood. Men, are you looking to buy a new home? Maybe it's a vacation home, maybe a rental property, or maybe it's building your dream home, and you need a mortgage. Well, I want to tell you about a tribesman who can help you with just that. Chris Norwood, call sign Coop from Hammer Tribe. He works at Town Bank Mortgage. He has been doing this for over 21 years. He's qualified to lend in 16 states. He can definitely help you out. Let me give you his contact info. You can go to townbankmortgage.com/Chris Norwood, or you can call him directly at 804-439-3206. Again, this is Chris Norwood, call sign Coop. He's a Men's Alliance guy from Town Bank Mortgage who can help get you a loan for your dream home. He even helped Iron buy his new house. Check him out. All right, welcome back. We're talking today with Don Ross about rites of passage from boyhood to manhood, how to create those, how to navigate them as the dad, why they're so important. So Don's got a great program called First Tribe, and his website is manhoodtribes.com. He's got a lot of the same themes as Men's Alliance, right? We overlap a lot in our messaging and what we see going on in society and what we believe. So check this out. Don, talk a minute to the dad who, because I think this is all of us when I think about it, right? Like the dad who, I'm like, man, this is all of us. The dad who feels like, who am I to do this?
Yeah.
I don't even know that I've arrived, right? Who am I to create ceremony and confer manhood on somebody else? I don't feel qualified myself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question, because I agree with you. I think to some extent that's all of us as dads. When we think about tackling the really heavy duty stuff when it comes to life and relationships, all of us feel insecure, unqualified, incompetent at some level, just kind of like, am I the right guy to do this? And so I get it. And I hear that from dads, all the time in terms of thinking about doing this rite of passage thing. Like, I just wouldn't even know where to get started. I don't know what to do. Anytime I try to have, serious conversations with my boy at this age, like, he just rolls his eyes and wants to put his earbuds back in, he's just like, he's not interested in talking to me. So look, I get it. And I'm there as well. I've got 2 boys myself that are 16 and 14. And I took both of them through this First Tribe program. And honestly, like, this is part of why I created this program, is for dads to be able to say, I don't have to know how to do all of this. I don't have to have all the answers, but I can use this tool to help me have the right conversations with my son during this season. So I really try to take like all of the scary parts out of it for you, and just help you as a dad focus on that quality time and quality conversation with your son. And I map that out for you too. Like, here's the things to do. Here's the things to talk about. There's a lot of it that is just kind of plug and play. But what isn't plug and play about it is the actual time that you get to spend with your son. And so that's what's really most important is, what your son needs mostly during this season is not like more video content from, me or some other man who's teaching you about being a man. What your son really needs is
you. Not the kind of thing where you pop in a video for him.
Yeah. What your son, yeah, exactly. So, in me creating videos for you to use, it's not me in any way trying to take your place, because what your son needs is you, Dad. He needs
Yeah.
you more than anything to be able to navigate this season well. And he's looking to you, whether you realize it or not, or even maybe whether you want him to or not. He's looking to you. And so, I just want to encourage every dad out there to just say, you do have what it takes. You do have what it takes to help your son become a man. And First Tribe is really just a tool to be able to help you get there. It's not a short circuit to the process. It's not a shortcut to be able to, like, you don't have to do any of the work. It's really just meant to be a thing that will help you figure out what steps you do need to take and how to be able to do those things well.
And that's you're just knocking it out of the park. And while you were talking, I was just remembering the fact that I think the best approach, and the one I took when those topics come up with my sons that I don't feel qualified to speak to because of my own past failures, dads, lean into that.
Yeah.
Talk about your past failures.
Yeah.
Talk about the mistakes you've made. Right? I think the worst mistake we can make is try to pretend like we're perfect and we're trying to help them get to where we are. No, truth is, like, we've all messed up. We've all crashed on the rocks a few times, and now we know where the rocks are, and we can shine a spotlight on them so that those coming behind us don't make the same mistake. So, dads, like, man, if you've struggled with like a drug addiction, man, talk about that. Say, I've been addicted to drugs, and I've gone through recovery, and here's what that did to my life, and here's what I want you to learn from that, right? Or if you've struggled with pornography or affairs or whatever, financial problems, man, I used to be terrible with money, son, and I've made these mistakes and I got in debt, and here's what I did to get out of it. And so, like, I would say, talk about your failures or whatever the thing is in your life that makes you feel, I don't know if I'm qualified to do this. Dude, talk about it, because anything else is going to kind of be seen through as inauthentic.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I love what you're saying, because I think it begins to open the door for, there is a time in a boy's life when it is really helpful for his dad to start opening up and being vulnerable about what his life has actually looked like and some of the mistakes that he has made and would like to do differently, or wish that he could have done differently, or hopes that his son does differently. Is it appropriate to talk about all those things when he's 6? No, probably not. But this season, in the kind of that middle school age range, I think is where it is appropriate to start opening that door. Maybe there's some things in your past that you need to save some of those things to talking about later at a high school age, when your son might be at the place where he could be wrestling with those things too. But the questions that we do in the gatherings with the dads and sons all together, especially when we ask some questions of the dads, they are really meant to be exactly that, what you're talking about. It's just to give the dads an opportunity to be able to say, here's some ways that I did this well. Here's some ways that I really did not do this well, and for the boys to hear, like, oh, they made mistakes too. Like they didn't do it all right. They weren't perfect. And maybe even as teenagers, they really messed up. I think all of that really helps encourage a son to be able to see, he doesn't have to get it all right. He doesn't have to get it perfect on the first try. But B, that he can arrive at that place of manhood even with making some mistakes along the way. I think all of that is really, really good. It helps him to begin to understand that being a man isn't, a state of perfection that he's trying to arrive at. It's just kind of that settled confidence of, I have attempted and, challenged myself at life and shown that I can do something about these challenges. And when I make mistakes, I'll learn how to be able to recover from them. And, if we can teach them that as a dad, teaching your son that, that gives me great hope that I can send my son out into the world and feel like he's going to be okay, and that's really what we're after.
I think a lot of this is modeling for him how to fail.
Yeah.
You're gonna fail, son. You're not gonna win first place at everything your whole life. You're gonna have some losses. You're gonna suffer some defeats and setbacks. Here's some that I did. Here's how you deal with it, right? I think maybe one of the best things that we can do for our sons is prepare them for how to carry themselves after a loss, how to get back up, how to keep going. And, a lot of this whole, that I know like you and I have seen in our last few years here is all this helicopter parenting that really prevents the boy from getting the opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
And you got to let them fail. That's so important. It's imperative that they fail. Otherwise, they never will learn they'll never learn character, basically. You can't have character and honor and integrity if you're always winning. And so
that's right.
It's important for them to get some skinned knees, physically and emotionally, so that we can teach them how to pick themselves back up.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a lot of the way that we try to design those manhood challenges too, is just to be able to say, life is going to throw you a whole set of challenges at every stage of your life. Some of them are going to be harder than others. Some of them are going to make you feel like you want to die. That's just life. Like, it is really hard at times. And so part of our job as dads is to just equip our sons to be able to say, you're going to face some things that feel absolutely insurmountable. What are you going to do in the face of those things? We can't prepare them for every single challenge, but what we do want to prepare them for is to be the kind of man that has that settled confidence where he believes of himself that he can face those challenges. He may not be able to overcome them well or perfectly, but that's what we want for him. That's what we're hoping for and trying to help him get to in this season.
Yeah, that's good. So I've gone through two different curriculums. I went through, like I mentioned earlier, The Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert Lewis. I went through that with my oldest son. And then I went through with the other four dads. We went through one called The Crossing.
Okay.
And it has like two books. It's got like the mentor manual and the young man's manual. And so we went through those. And, the thing I like that I'm hearing you say is you've got these questions in there. That tease up the dad for the conversation. And I think that's what's really important, because dads, I know you're listening to this and you're like, man, I want to do this. I want to have these conversations with my son. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do. You get a program like this, like First Tribe, it's gonna have the questions for you. It's gonna have the challenges there, the ideas. So a lot of that is, it takes the pressure off of you when you're sitting there, because if there's a book in the room, that book's kind of like a third party.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like the triangulation. It's not just you and your son. It's we've got this other thing, and here's what this thing is saying. What do you think about that, son?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about this thing instead of talking about you or about me, and we do end up talking about you and about me, but we're coming at it from an angle that feels a little like there's a little bit of a safer entry there.
Yeah. Another thing that I did with both of my boys is I added an element that was all me. I added my own element to both of those programs that I mentioned. And I'm going to share that. So have you ever heard of the poem If by Rudyard Kipling?
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, if you're listening to this, if you're not familiar with the poem If by Rudyard Kipling, you have to Google it. You have to read this poem. The whole poem, it's a father talking to a son about how to become a man, and it's a very long poem.
Yes, it is.
It's very long, and it begins, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. I love that line. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. I mean, that's how the whole poem goes. It's like mic drop after mic drop.
Yeah.
And don't worry, I'm not going to say the whole thing here, but I've always loved that poem. I memorized it when I was a very young man, and so I required each son to memorize it, and it took them about a year. I mean, they were working on it for a long time. And there would be like, Dad, are you serious? Do I really have to memorize this thing? So there was resistance. I encountered resistance. I kept saying, encouraging, yep, come on, you can do it. Just, work on one line a week, and so we would do this in culmination, building up to either that 13th birthday or that 15th birthday or whenever we were going to do it. And I told him, I prepared them. You're gonna stand up and say this poem. And
That's cool.
they're scared to death, right? But
Yeah,
my younger
I'm sure,
son,
yeah.
he saw it happen. He saw it happen with his big brother,
Yeah.
and so he had a little bit of that advantage to having seen this done once, and
Yeah.
and he really struggled with it. But my point is, you can add an element, dads. You can add a thing, maybe if it's something important from your family, something that's been very meaningful to your dad, something that's meaningful in your life, an oath, a creed, a poem, something like that. Of course, when I went through last year with the group of dads, they're not all doing the poem "If" with their boys. We were doing the Men's Alliance Creed. And so that was something that we all had in common. But then in addition, I was just doing the poem "If" for my son. So I think that was always a very meaningful thing to me, because I felt like I was putting my own mark on it, on this curriculum, on this program. I was like, hey, that's all great, but in addition, we're going to do this. You're going to have to memorize "If." And Braden's like, Dad, that's not even in the book. None of the other guys are doing it, right? But
I love that though, man. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. And you can couch it in terms of a manhood challenge. There's something there to be able to kind of challenge.
That's for sure.
But I do think that's a great way to help kind of localize it, and not just be a man in general, but what does being a man in our family look like? I think that's a great kind of aspect to be able to bring that into. That's really good.
So talk to us a little bit about the ceremony piece. What's that look like at the end? Tell us how you made that look with your boys.
Yeah. So the ceremony is super cool at the end. So the last manhood challenge that they get before coming to the ceremony really revolves around that idea of, do I have what it takes? And so their challenge is a skill challenge, which is basically that they have to learn a new skill and be able to teach it to the rest of the boys. And we typically say like some kind of outdoor or wilderness skill, something like that, so that we can make it fun. But the guys come prepared to do, just all sorts of things. We've done everything from learning to shoot bow and arrow, learning to chop wood, learning to grill a hamburger, learning to fly fish, learning how to tie effective knots in your ropes. Just all kinds of things. It's been super fun. So, each kid in the group has to spend some time demonstrating his skill that he's learned to everybody else in the group, and then they have to have some things for the other guys to be able to practice. It's a really good time. So we do all that. We complete the skill challenge. We usually, kind of depending on the time, we usually do dinner together, and it's just a great way to kind of cap off the 9 months, just kind of celebrating together. And then there's an actual kind of like ceremonial piece where we, there's some script, and the dad is given some things to be able to say. We do kind of a walkthrough of all of the things that they have learned from the past. So the big 4 questions and the answers to those things, the 5 marks of manhood and what they've learned about all of that. So we walk through those in some really kind of special ways. And, we do things like tiki torches and swords and, all that, just bringing in some like cool, visual elements to it as well. The symbol that we kind of use for First Tribe is of a torch, which is, which I know is, you guys use the language of carrying the fire a lot. And so it kind of has to do with that. They actually get a little kit that has they get to kind of build their own torch, and they carry it through the ceremony. So there's some really cool
like that. That's
aspects
awesome.
of that. And then at the end, there's some time for the dads have actually prepared a letter that they write to their sons. And so probably the most meaningful part of the ceremony is the dads reading these letters to their sons and just affirming them, encouraging them, validating them, calling them up into the community of manhood. And you want to see some guys weep. It happens in this ceremony. Every time I've done it, there's some dads who are, the tears are coming as they speak, good things into their son's life. And of course they would, that's appropriate. Like, this is super meaningful and super special. And it gives everybody an opportunity to really be able to say the things that they would love to say and just never take the opportunity to do so. So it creates all those kind of special moments. There's some things we give them at the end just to kind of commemorate their time, some cool little trinkets and tokens and stuff. But that's really it. It's a special ceremony. It's a really cool night together. And the boy walks away feeling like he accomplished something amazing, and he feels invited in the
Yeah.
community of men. So it's really good.
Man, I love hearing that. Some really cool elements there. Some stuff you said that's like what I did, and some stuff you said that's totally different. I love the making your torch and then carrying it. Man, that's
so fun. I mean,
very
what
cool.
what 13-year-old boy doesn't love fire?
Yeah.
So
Heck yeah.
I mean,
You
what
know-
grown man doesn't love fire? So
Yeah.
it's just cool to make your own torch and carry it around outside. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
My oldest, we sat around. We went. A group of us. We all went kayaking and canoeing down the river that day, and then that night we were sitting around the fire in the backyard for his ceremony, and we ate a big meal, and then around the fire we all talked and we all read him those things, and then my other son, we sat around a table indoors. We set some deer skulls on the table and ate steaks. Just all the men that had been meaningful and influential in his life, and then the thing that I've done, like you said, is the letters. We've had men who couldn't be there, men that weren't at the ceremony, all sent him a letter of personalized to him about what they see in him and what they expect out of him and what he can expect from them, and just that call. And so for each of my boys, I took all those letters, I put them all together in like a binder and handed it to them.
Yeah,
Afterward,
awesome.
I was like, hey, here's what everybody said to you, so you can have it and go back and refer to it from time to time. And then my boys, then at the end of that, the letters, and we're all crying and all that good stuff. And we got full bellies, and then they had to stand up and they had to recite the poem, and they each did it. By the way, they each got it. They nailed it. They knocked it out of the park, and then I presented each of them. I know a lot of dads do swords. I think that's a super popular one. I see you got some swords behind you.
I do, yeah.
And then I know the coins, the personalized challenge coins. Those are popular. We're hunters in my family, and I was always teaching my boys how to hunt, and they've hunted and killed deer when they were young with me, and so that's always been a part of like our life. And so I presented each one of them with a firearm. That was like their big thing, because it's like that's something you don't hand a boy,
Right.
And so, and I talk about that. I'm like, I wouldn't give you this if you were a kid. I wouldn't give you this if you were a little boy. I'm giving this to you because you're a man. And my hope is that they have that throughout their whole lives.
Yeah.
It's something that they won't outgrow, and something that maybe even their son will have one day. But
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we include a pocket knife in there's a
that's
little
good.
physical kit that comes with First Tribe. So when you purchase it, you get a kit that has a bunch of stuff in it, for your son to use over the course of the 9 months. But there's some stuff related to the final ceremony there, and we know, I think that's totally appropriate. And different guys have different opinions on what's the right age or right time to do those kinds of things. We kind of feel like a pocket knife is a safe, good thing, but also a manly thing. It's good for a man to carry a knife around, and just to have that as a tool in his belt, on a regular basis. And so it's also not the kind of weapon that you're going to use to do real harm to people. And so we feel like that's an appropriate gift that anybody can get behind. If you want to do something else, we of course allow for that and encourage that, and think that that's really good. But that's kind of where we take it.
I love that. So you've got this kit. It's gonna set a dad up for success. It's going to get you started. It's going to walk you through everything. And like I did, you can feel free to adjust, to add, to make it your own. But the important thing is that we do this.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
It was you feel kind of awkward as the dad, I think, when you start on your first son, and you're like, oh man, I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be cringy and goofy. I just got to tell you, dads, you got to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, they look up to you. You're their dad. Just do it. Just knock it out of the park. It's going to go better than you think, right?
Yeah, it will.
It's not as hard as we pretend.
No, it's not. And will there be some awkward moments? Yeah, probably. Your son's at an awkward age. There are going to be some awkward moments. Just push through them. It's not that big a deal that it's an awkward moment. Just allow it to be that and move forward.
Yeah, I love I love the quote. I don't know where this is from. I've heard that it's an African proverb, but if we don't initiate the boys, they will burn down the village.
Yeah.
And I think I first read that when I was reading Stephen Mansfield, and we've talked about that with him before. The importance of initiating boys into manhood really cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
It adds value to their life for sure, to your life, to your family's life, but it adds value to the community and ultimately to the country, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the problems we have in this country with masculinity is we've got a whole bunch of big baby boys walking around in men's bodies. And it's imperative that we create these moments, that we create these lines of demarcation in a boy's life where he knows he has crossed over, he has stepped over the line. And ultimately, if you look at the Jewish tradition of it, it really is a legal issue. It says you're accountable.
Yeah.
You're responsible for yourself now, right? If a Jewish boy age 12 breaks the neighbor's window, that parent is responsible, and they have to pay for it. After your 13th birthday, you mess up, it's on you.
It's yours.
You're fixing the problem because, it's like a relief for the parents, right? We're like, it's on you now. So there is that legal importance, I think, is like, hey, you're responsible for your actions, and I'm going to hold you to a higher standard. And we have to change as the parents the day after this ceremony too.
Right.
If you go through all this work and you go through these 9 months or these 12 months and then you cap it off with this Grand Slam ceremony, and then the next day you're asking him if he brushed his teeth and, let me help you with your homework. I think you're undermining the whole thing that you just did, right?
Yeah.
Let them fail. Let them get an F. Let them get, laughed at because they have bad breath because they didn't brush their teeth. Let them start feeling the natural consequences of their actions instead of constantly protecting them and insulating them along the way, and making sure that they never get a skin knee. I think after you do this ceremony,
we have to let the weight of their choices rest on them.
That's well said.
And give them the responsibility to figure out what they're going to do about it. Like, okay, how are you going to handle this? You're a man. You're equipped to handle this at this point. You have what it takes. What are you going to do about it? So yeah, I agree 100%.
My wife and I, one of our love languages is sharing memes and reels with each other, and so I've become aware that there's a whole bunch of memes going around that women are making and sending around that say things to the effect of, my son just got a face tattoo, so go ahead and bottle feed. It doesn't matter. And so think about that one for a second, dads. Just let that one sink in. I think there's a huge point in that too, that we've got to, that this is all for the day after and the year after you've done this in the ceremony. It's like, you've done your best. You've given this your best. You've set them up for success as best you could. You've given them every head start that they could imagine into manhood. And now they really are on their own. And they really do start making their own decisions. And they will not always make decisions that you agree with.
Yep.
Right. And they're gonna drift. And, I think we see this a lot when kids do really well, when they exceed, when they go to some great university and they become doctors. Those parents are a little too proud, right? It's like, that's not all on you. That's not all your credit. Like, that's just that kid. That's not a reflection of how amazing you are. But also the same thing is true when the kid doesn't do so well. Yeah. When the kid kind of drifts into a place of disappointment, that's not on you either, right? So I think a lot of this, and this is, we could keep going here, but a lot of this, we're talking to dads raising men. That's the topic. We're dads raising men, and it's like, Dad, I talk with a lot of dads who are wringing their hands and really beating themselves up because their kid isn't living the way they want them to. And they're like, but I did everything I could. I'm like, well, hey, yeah, you did. It's them. They're their own human. They're their own man.
Yeah.
They're making their own choices. You got to let them go.
Yep.
So I think a piece of this too is, man, pour into them with everything you've got. Give them your best so that when they're 30, you don't have any regrets. Give them every lesson, every song and poem and rite of passage, and read books together and give them the ceremony. And then, like you said, Don, let them feel the weight of their own choices on their shoulder and realize that they're not your life.
Yep.
And you get to continue to live your life, and hopefully you're pouring into your wife at this stage, and that you're making that your focus and not a kid-centered family, not a kid-centered marriage, but a wife, spouse-centered marriage. So, Don, closing thoughts, closing comments. What are your last shots for us on rites of passage?
Yeah, I would just say, for as much as we've talked about like the hard work that goes into this, I would also just say this should be a lot of fun. It should be a really good season for you and your boy, and so take advantage of it. This can be a season where you build some really lasting memories in your relationship with your son that he looks back on and goes, man, that season was awesome. It was fun. I learned a lot. I got challenged, but I love my dad, and I really enjoyed spending a lot of time with him. So you can do it, Dad. You can do it, and it can be a really good time along the way.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for that encouragement, Don. And Don's website is manhoodtribes.com, and we will link that in the show notes. And we're going to check out your package called First Tribe for our guys in Men's Alliance. We've got so many Men's Alliance guys with young boys that I know are looking for something that they can do, some sort of rite of passage. So we're going to link all that in the show notes as well. 5 marks of manhood. A lot of great overlap here with what we're doing and with what he's doing. So I think we've all got the exact same goal in mind. Don, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been awesome talking with you. I've loved this topic. I love this conversation. And we're not too far away. So hopefully we'll be bringing Men's Alliance to Raleigh soon. And,
sounds good, man.
And we can connect over that as well.
All right. Thanks, Goose. It's been a real treat getting to be on the show with you.
All right. Thanks, man. Well, guys, that was another great conversation. That was Don Ross. And check him out. His links are in the show notes. It's so important as dads to bring our young men from boyhood into manhood. The rites of passage ceremonies are so important, as we talked about. It's something I've done for years. My sons are now 20 and 16. So it's stuff that I've done for them for quite a long time. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it was great to run into another Christian warrior who's got a ministry like this packaged up and ready to help men guide and shepherd their sons through this. So very important topic. But I also want to tell you this: you can't lead to where you've never been. So much a part of shepherding the lives of our young boys into manhood is growing into proper, responsible, honorable Christian manhood ourselves. You got to get into a tribe in order to do that. You can't do it in isolation. It doesn't work that way. We need the iron to sharpen our iron. That's how it's designed, and that's how it works. So if you live near a tribe, get involved in it, or you can start one in your area. But I also want to tell you about an incredible option that's going to be the best option for a lot of you, and that is coming to our Start the Fire weekend experience. April 19th and 20th is our next one here just outside of Richmond, Virginia. Go to our website, check it out, men'salliancetribe.com. Register today for Start the Fire. You don't have to have any prior anything to come to this event. There are no prerequisites. We want you to come to Start the Fire. we will introduce you to Men's Alliance workouts, devotions, how to build fires, literally starting the fire, right? And then leadership challenges and exercises and opportunities to sharpen yourself as a husband and a father and a leader. So check it out at men'salliancetribe.com and our brand new website. You're going to absolutely love it. Go click on experiences and register today. I will see you around the fire. Thanks for listening to the Men's Alliance podcast. We hope to see you in one of our tribes or at one of our unforgettable weekend experiences. So join us at men'salliancetribe.com.